In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the top strut mount on your Nissan Altima. Remove your 5 21mm lug nuts. Remove the wheel. Remove the cotter pin out of the axle. Using a 32mm socket, we're going to remove the axle nut. Make sure your axle pushes in, moves freely. Remove the nut off of the top sway bar link. Push that back and pull it out of the way. Remove the brake hose retainer. Pull the brake line out. Kind of put it off to the side for now. Push the ABS wire out of the two brackets on either side of the strut. And we're going to kind of lay this in front. And I'm going to put it under the bracket for when we take the strut out so it's not in the way. Using a 21mm wrench and socket, we're going to remove the two strut bolts. Remove the strut bolts. We're going to drop the axle forward. You may have to pull this ABS wire out one more. There's a bracket on the inside firewall. And make sure your axle pulls out. We're going to take out the top 3 bolts for the top strut. When taking these bolts out, you want to leave one of them in until you're ready to take the strut out. If you take them all out, the strut is just going to fall since we have everything disconnected on the bottom. Once we have all the nuts out, we're going to pull the strut down and out of the wheel well. With our strut set up in the spring compressor, we're going to compress the strut. Using a 17mm wrench and a T45, we're going to remove the nut off of the spring. Remove the top hat and bearing off of the spring. Remove the boot off of the top hat if it's stuck on there. Be a little isolator in there. We're going to put that back over the strut. Grab your new top hat. If you'd like, you can put a little bit of silicone paste around here to help it not rub or make any noise against the top of the coil. Install the new bearing. Grab your new top hat. Put a little bit of silicone on here if you'd like. Put that inside of there. Install the strut, lining the spring up with the bottom isolator. There is a stopping point on it. And then lining up the strut shaft. Push the shaft up into place and screw the nut on. Get that started. Make sure everything's lined up correctly. You really only want to try to spin the nut. You do not want to try and spin the shaft. You just want to hold the shaft in place. Once you have the nut mostly tightened, I like to take a little bit of the pressure off. This will hold the shaft for us so we don't have to worry about it as much. Never undo this nut if your spring is not compressed. Torque this top nut to 54 foot-pounds. If you can't get a torque wrench, do the best you can. Once you take it out of the spring compressor, it's time to put it into the car. When installing the strut, you want this concave part on this back and this little tab facing forward. Put it up into the strut tower and get your bolts started. Once you have at least 2 started, you don't have to worry about holding the strut anymore. Snug the bolts down. Push the knuckle back into place. Make sure your axle splines line up with the hub. I'm going to wiggle the knuckle a little bit to help me line up the bolts. I like to put in the bottom one first and then push the top in. Start those two. I'm going to put the ABS sensor back into its bracket, push those grommets in. If you took this one off, put this one in as well. Put my brake hose back in. And install the lock. You can use a little hammer. Put it back in. Install the sway bar link into the strut. I'm going to start that nut. Tighten the sway bar link nut. I'm going to tighten down the strut bolts. Torque these bolts to 103 foot-pounds. Same thing on the bottom. Torque the sway bar link to 50 foot-pounds. Install the axle nut onto the axle. Using a pry bar, we're going to hold the studs of the hub and torque our axle nut to 92 foot-pounds. Install the cotter pin, and we're going to bend it over. Install the wheel. Snug down the lug nuts. Put the vehicle on the ground. I'm going to torque the wheels to 100 foot-pounds. moving in a star pattern. Torque these top bolts to 26 foot-pounds.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.